Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi at-Tahirin. In the realm of the tariqah, when they refer to someone as a Christian or a Jew, or even a Hindu or whatever religion, it's not the follower of that particular religion. It's not the follower that they're referring to. Rather, it's that ideology, that doctrine which they believe. That is their main focus when people of the tariqah speak of Christians and Jews. And therefore, it is possible for a Muslim to be termed as a Christian or a Jew if their doctrine is not correct and is on a par with those religions. Imam Hussein alayhi salam said, "Muli'at butunukum min al-haram," that your insides have been filled with haram. Now that has a haram which is a physical haram on a par with the Sharia, but the spiritual haram which is also entailed in this holy tradition is that the doctrine that you have is not on a par with true Islam, and by true Islam we mean pure Tawhid. To the degree that pure Tawhid is compromised, this compromising can manifest itself as someone who is Jewish, even though by name they're Muslim, or a Muslim who can be Christian spiritually, and they'll be resurrected as such. Not in 100%, but partly in the hereafter, a Muslim person will be resurrected not only as a Muslim, but that doctrine of theirs can make them be resurrected as a non-Muslim too. And here that's why in Islamic doctrine it's very important that the doctrine has to be acknowledged and accepted in a manner which is on a par with pure Tawheed. Pure Tawheed should not be compromised. So even the likes of Imam Khomeini have mentioned it, that when it comes to the issue of intercession, the way many Muslims have understood it, it's exactly like the intercession, the distorted form of intercession that the Christians believe, with the Christ dying for everyone on the cross. So here is an example. If shafa'ah is not understood properly, one may be resurrected as a Christian. And one can even go further. When someone says one is submitting to, let's say, a holy personality, and they're doing it and assigning independence to that holy personality without looking at that personality as merely a reflection of divine attributes. No, they're submitting to the person themselves, and they want the person themselves to help. That's like idolatry, an open form of shirk. And these people, Muslim, they may be resurrected as mushrikeen in the open sense. Or, for example, a form of Tawheed where they understand Tawheed with the builder and building scenario, where a builder builds a house and then has nothing to do with the house anymore and goes on to the next house or something. That kind of Tawheed, where once upon a time there's Allah, nothing else, then Allah creates from nothingness and then leaves that creation on its own. That's a Judaic understanding of Tawheed, of monotheism. They have that builder-building analogy in their works. If a Muslim were to believe in such an analogy, yes, they've compromised true Islam, which is pure Tawheed, into a distorted form, and they will be resurrected as a Jew. Or, for example, articles of faith such as Qiyamah, resurrection, or Raj'at, these things, the way it's explained is very much on a par with reincarnation. And that's why there's no taqleed in doctrine. You have to understand it wholly by yourself. It has to be rational. If you just believe it because of your forefathers, yes. Without knowing it, you're a believer of reincarnation and you'll be resurrected as a Hindu, for example. Then sometimes things can become a bit more finer. In the Quran, there's a verse that reads, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, O believers. So speaking to Muslims here. La tattakhidhu al-yahuda wan-nasara awliya. Don't make Jews or Christians as authorities over you. Don't submit to them. Don't make them your an authority and you being under their authority and submitting to their laws, for example. Then later in the same verse it says, وَمَن يَتَوَلَّهُمْ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. And those who do submit to that guardianship or authority amongst you of such people, verily you're one of them. You're them. But they're all Muslims though. Yes, they're Muslims. But they've spiritually contaminated themselves. And they'll be resurrected as a Jew or a Christian. Why? Because they submitted. And that submission was wholehearted. It wasn't, something which they would battle with, at least within themselves. And over a period of time, they become comfortable with it. These people are spiritually contaminating themselves. In many traditions, we have those who don't go to Hajj when they were able to go, but they didn't go, they die a death of a Jew or a Christian. All the spirituality that Hajj has, and in the religions of Judaism and Christianity, they don't have this Hajj ceremony, because this was through the line of the prophets, through Ismail, through Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. Those religions that came, true religions that came, like Christianity and Judaism, which came through the Isaic line, through Nabi Ishaq, who's another son of Nabi Ibrahim. Judaism and Christianity, they arose then. It arose at the same time as the Abrahamic faith. But Hajj only existed in this line, through the Ismaili line of prophets. And our prophet is the end, last prophet in that line. But all prophets of the other line, like Musa, Isa, and so on and so forth, they didn't have this protocol of Hajj, like the Ibrahimi line. The reasons for that is because of the difference of people's inner natures differed, time, place, potential, and therefore the Sharia would come for a people of a certain time and place and inner potential. So that's why we have these differences of Sharia over time. So here, yes, you die as a Christian, but you're a Muslim, and you had a lot of faith in the articles of faith, and you will be resurrected as a Muslim, but that's only partial. You will also partially be resurrected as a Christian, as a Jew, if that was not done. And there are other traditions, and we'll go through another one soon. But Imam Hussein alayhi salam, before going to Karbala, from Medina, he went to Mecca and he performed an Umrah. He had never intended to do the Tamattu Hajj. The intention was to do Umrah. But after doing the Umrah, he set off. We have to ask ourselves, what is it in this Umrah, what is it in this Hajj part of the Umrah, which is so important that the Holy Imam would first do that and go through it and then go and fight and go towards Karbala. That's a very important theme, and here we have to dissect which part of the Hajj is it which is so important that whoever wants to go and struggle against an oppressor, or for whatever noble cause, Islamic cause that they have, what is it at the heart of the Umrah Hajj which is important? And that inshallah we can discuss later. Other traditions where the Imam says, and all denominations of Islam have this as a tradition, Man mata wa lam ya'rif imam zamanihi mata mitatan jahiliyyah. That whoever dies whilst not knowing the Imam of their time, they've died the death of someone who resided in the period of Jahiliyyah, before Islam. Now even something like this, it's possible that someone be a Christian by name, but in action they're following the Imam of their time, that Muslim Imam of their time. That's possible. And that's why many people, with the coming of the 12th Imam from other religions, they will come and accept him immediately. All these traditions, where we're trying to extrapolate the concept of spiritual contamination of the soul, all these are indicative of this reality, that the more the fitrah is preserved on what? Based on what? The more it's preserved, the more it preserves that pure Tawhid. And everything which comes from pure Tawhid, the more that's preserved, the more they are on a par with true Islam and with the wants of the Imam of their time. That's a principle we have. It's not a case of you being a Muslim by name, them being a Christian by name, and you being better than them. It's not like that. Rather, it's whose fitrah is on a par with pure Tawheed. You answer that question, one's resurrection will be manifested, will become apparent. Now, yes, maybe in most cases that happens, that it will be more, the resurrection of Muslims may have the upper hand, maybe, but maybe not. But in those traditions of the end of time, when we see scholars going against the Imam of their time, and non-scholars who are Christians attracting themselves or being attracted to the Imam of their time, this is indicative of this fact that the fitrah is more preserved. It all depends on the fitrah. It's not a mere label of you being a Muslim or a Christian which gives you that guarantee of the salvation in the afterlife. These labels are labels of a reality. That reality is the criterion. So if you have the label, but you don't have the reality within yourself, it's of no use. Even though you have the label, but you have that label, but you want to acquire that which the label is representing, a true fitrah, a Tawhidi fitrah. So even if you have that to X degree, but you don't have the label, it doesn't mean automatically you're going to go to hell. Going to hell, going to heaven, these are real issues. They're effects of real causes. The cause is maintaining that pure fitrah. And no religion has a monopoly over that, because religion is only one, and that is pure Tawheed. And that's what Islam is all about. And that's why it's, calling it Islam rather than Mohammedanism, that's one of the reasons why. But this is Islam. Religion is one. So a true Christian, a true Jew, a true Zoroastrian, whatever, they're Muslim in this sense. If it's distorted, their salvation will be compromised. But a Muslim can also believe in things in a particular way, act in a particular way, and their faith can be compromised, leading to that spiritual contamination, and then their salvation will be compromised by default. So here we see that which Imam Hussein, and this was one of his final statements, is your inside has been contaminated, has been filled with haram. This haram is physical haram, but also is haram in a spiritual sense. And all those spiritual sins, one of those things are doctrinal deviations. Doctrinally, you are a believer of something, and therefore you're filling your soul with that belief. Most people were Muslim there, but they had those spiritual contaminations in Karbala. And this made them go against the Imam of their time. Before they would go and kill the physical Imam, they killed their physical Imam spiritually and inside their hearts because of the doctrine they had. This killing the physical Imam was just a manifestation of that killing of the Imam within oneself. Once one's doctrine has led to or has surpassed a threshold of spiritual contamination, you've killed your Imam. Yes, in those days Jews would kill maybe 70 prophets at a time. They would kill many prophets. Today we may feel free. There is no prophet, so we're not killing the prophets. There's no Imam, we're not killing the Imam. However, those Jews who would kill 70 prophets at a time, they had killed the prophet within before it led them to physically kill the prophet in the exterior, in the external realm. We shouldn't feel complacent just because we're living in a time where there are no prophets and no Imam with us. However, the same inner journey applies to us. We have to make sure not to kill that inner Imam within us. And there's one story in the Holy Quran, we may go through it, where this reality is highlighted. And it goes through the reasoning, what led them to kill that inner Imam. These things are important. And therefore, if you've killed the inner Imam today without even knowing it, what use would it be for the 12th Imam to come? She will come in the future, in the physical form. But what use is that for you? Because you've killed the inner Imam. And that's why here, one who dies whilst not knowing the Imam. Lam ya'rif. Ya'rif is a form of irfan. Have you seen the Imam? Not necessarily physically, but much more important than that. Have you had a vision of an Imam? Or have you closed all the doors, making you not have a vision of an Imam, not have a tamathul of an Imam, not have a vision, apparition of the Imam? This is something which is instructed in Islam. Now, be it in your dreams, be it whilst you're awake, but have you closed the doors over your Imam? Or even worse, have you killed the Imam? The degrees are different. Sometimes because of your actions you've closed the doors, but you still believe and you want to see. Sometimes because of your actions you've killed the Imam within. There's no hope. And therefore, in general, we have to be careful not to be locked by these terms, such as Sunni, Shia, Christian, Jew, without paying attention to what these terms are signifying. The reality is that these are signifying are important, not the terms itself, without that reality. Otherwise, that complacency comes in, we're the best in the world, we're this in the world, this is the best denomination, they're the worst. The problem with that is, even those who are Muslims can contaminate themselves to a degree where they can be worse than Jews, Christians and Hindus. Now many people here then say, well, a Hindu was born in such a family and it's not their fault and so on and so forth. That's another issue. That's in relation to Judgment Day. Yes, how they will be judged is different to how someone who was born in a Muslim environment will be judged. That's another issue altogether. However, even that Hindu who was born, yes, they will be judged differently. his or her predecessors will be to blame. Those who led this person to be born in this Hindu family, they will be to blame. But even this person, even though they're born Hindu, they had an inner prophet. That inner prophet was their aql, their intellect, their rationality. There were some things that rationality approves of and can understand and can acknowledge. They will be judged based on that. And we don't know how people will be judged, because the way the traditions are mentioned in such a way that it's not the label which is important, it's the action. It's the fitrah and the inner status of the fitrah. So when traditions speak of a mushrik giving asylum to a Muslim in a land of kufr, look, they asked, what will happen to this mushrik? They said this mushrik will go to hell because he had no belief. However, in that hell, we will give them a residence where we won't allow them to burn, and we will provide them sustenance. Look, is it bad to be given divine sustenance? It doesn't matter that you're in hell, but because of the actions that you did, you are now given a certain status in hell where you won't burn, you won't suffer, but you're in hell. It's a place. But the issue is, you're given divine sustenance. Allah has sworn by His Majesty in some traditions that I will give sustenance to such a person. You see, this shows the label isn't important. You may be a mushrik, but you have some degree of salvation. Is it bad to be sustained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Of course not. Yes, with perfection, we want much more. But that mushrik may have a salvation which is better than many Muslims, at least to start off with. And so here, we shouldn't be complacent with these titles. Here, on the other side, against Imam Hussein alayhi salam, they were all Muslim. However, they may have been Christian in action, Jew in action, Hindu in action, mushrik in action, kafir in action. All these are possible, even though they are a Muslim by name. Look. And Imam said, he said, you fill yourselves with haram. And if you're not going to accept Allah's message, at least be one of the ahrar. Be one of those who are free in thought. At least you have an inner prophet. You have an inner imam. You didn't accept me, okay. But try to remove all the biases. You have aql. You have rationality. This rationality to some degree should tell you what perfection is and what perfection is not. What action is better than another action. And so on and so forth. So, that's an important issue that we have to always be careful about. Now here, the issue is, okay, so what is the main message? And we said that is pure Tawhid. Tawhid, if it's received wholeheartedly, and the heart has accepted it, not only academically, the fitrah, on a par with that pure Tawhid, will be kept, preserved, alive. It won't be veiled. So now the question is, how do we have to be a recipient of pure Tawhid? Because without a doubt, those last words of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and the maqtams are indicative of this. It's all about pure Tawhid. That's our goal. And in order for the fitrah to be preserved, pure Tawhid, a Tawhid which is compromised minimally, at least for our sake. Okay, so what do we have to do? Here, many different answers are given, and they're all answers in the same direction. In traditions such as Man arafa nafsah faqad arafa rabbah, one who knew one's self, one's soul, had known his Rabb, had known Allah. Look, meaning that they had to know Allah, Tawhid, before knowing oneself. Knowing oneself in many traditions is the best form of knowledge, and there are tens and tens of such traditions. However, to know oneself, one has to first have pure Tawhid. To the degree that your Tawhid is compromised or is deficient, to the same degree you don't even know your own soul. You don't even know your own self. The self that you know of is your passport, CV, self. But that's not the real you. That's your veiling Tawhid here. And you're veiling you to get to know who you really are, what you really are, and where you're going. And that's why you have to know who you are. But to do that, it can only be acquired through Tawhid again, through knowing your Lord. On the 9th day of the month of Hajj, after doing his Umrah, Imam Hussein in Arafat read a dua, which is very famous, the dua of Arafah. And other Imams also have this dua, but with Imam Hussein's, it's become now more the norm to read. Although other Imams on this day have many du'as, which can be seen in the books of du'as, such as Iqbal by Sayyid ibn Tawus. There, in the dua of Arafah, he recites a dua, and then at the end, for those, if you look at the books of dua, it says, the Imam said, Ya Rab, with one breath for a period of time. Ya Rab, Ya Rab, Rab, Rabbi, 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 Rabbi. And he went into a state. Those who would write the du'as, the scribes of the du'as, many of them would leave. They thought that was the end of the dua. This dua Arafah, after that, has an added part to it. It's called the added part, the tatimme of dua Arafah, and it's just as long. But it's called the annexed, the added part. Faiz Kashani, in his marginal notes in the book of Dua, Iqbal by Sayyid ibn Tawus, explains why this may have happened. Why do we have an added part to Dua Arafah of Imam Hussein? He said many scribes would leave. They thought that was the end of the dua. They would leave. Some people would stay. Then the Imam, when he would come out of that state, then he would go into the second part of the dua. And then those who would stay there, they would note this as an added part, the tatimme of dua Arafah of Imam Hussein. But this added part now becomes even more important. Because in the first part, it's all about creation and the signs of Allah in the physical realm. But when it comes to the added part, after that state he had entered, that swoon, when he said, Rabbi, 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 when he came out of that state, we see that in the added part, now it's pure Tawheed. But some doors, it stops there. With some doors, though, it has this added part too. In Iqbal, this added part is added. But the important thing is now the Imam is giving this added prescription in his du'as. And here, pure Tawheed is very visible here. Part of this added dua, the Imam reads, ترددي في الآثار يوجب بعد المزار. That my perusing through your physical creation and your author, your signs and manifestations, leads to bu'd al-mazar, leads to a distancing from seeing you. Not seeing with the physical eye, but that seeing with the eyes of the heart. When I'm just looking at creation, yes, it's your creation, alhamdulillah. One recalls Allah, but it distances me from seeing you, bu'd al-mazar, Mazar comes from, ziyara. Ziyara isn't just going and coming. The ziyara of Imam Hussein isn't just to walk 80 kilometers. That's part of the etiquette. But if you walk 80 kilometers and you never have a ziyara, a seeing of the Imam, you haven't succeeded. It's still minimum. These are some of those practices I was referring to, where it's totally a physical walking. It even becomes fashionable sometimes. Look, this is a very important point, that the ibadat, it's called taklif. Taklif is a form of burden. It's supposed to be a burden. For example, it's time of salat now. Usually you would watch television or do something, work, earn money, and it's a kind of burden now. You can't do those things. It's time of salat. Or the zakat that you give, it's a burden. It's some of your wealth. You don't want to give it. It's a lessening. Your wealth is becoming lessened. Why are you doing it? It's a kind of taklif, a kind of burden. Fasting is a kind of burden. Hajj, because you're not eating, or there's no nutritional appetite or other forms of appetites. You're prohibited. It's a kind of burden. And that's why don't we fast every day? It's mustahab. But why don't we do it? Why don't we do more salat every day? Well, if you're true to yourself, we don't do all the mustahab salats. We don't do all the mustahab fasting. We don't do all the mustahab zakats. Why? Because it's a burden. We don't want to have those burdens. We don't want to experience those burdens. One illness which is happening in our communities is, why does Hajj not become a burden? Why are they going to Hajj every day and they're enjoying it? They're going for the 80-kilometer walk and they're enjoying it. If they can, they'll go every year for you. The same person for salat, for fasting, for the other ibadat, it's all a burden. All of a sudden, for these ibadat, for these taklif, which they're supposed to be burdens, they don't become a burden. And that's why the spirit of Hajj is on the brink of extinction. The spirit of Karbala may be on the brink of extinction, but we suffice with an 80-kilometer walk. It doesn't matter. One day maybe 100 million people would come for the walk. Is that it? We're now successful. The issues of the Muslim Ummah is over. We've all guaranteed our salvation now? Of course not. What kind of a religion would that be if we were to think that? The be-all and end-all for some people is just this 80-kilometer walk. And in those 80 kilometers, things happen. Things happen. I don't want to really go into detail, but Hajj, it's become a journey of tourism. It's more tourism than experiencing the philosophy, the secrets, the burdens of Hajj. Once upon a time, they would walk distances. They can go on with the camel. They were able to travel with the camel or the horse, but they would prefer to walk. That journey of walking with all the burdens that they would face would refine them. A refined person would enter the haram of Allah. But today, we're preoccupied with our worldly lives, and with a 3 or 5 hour journey, the next day we see ourselves in the haram, with no refining, with no burdens. We go to the best of hotels, have the best of foods. The spirit of Hajj is lost. It's more of a tourism event than a journey of the soul. There is no journey of the soul. A few hours before, you were drowned in your preoccupied worldly life. A few hours later, you're now in the haram of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course you won't change. Of course you won't become a better person. Of course you would be the same person as you were before. Because you experienced no taklif as it should have been. So it's always a suspicious question mark that one has to have to oneself, of course, and say, why am I enjoying this particular action more? Sometimes a jama'ah, and even a congregational prayer, you would never go. But now, because of a certain person or certain events that follow a salat, now you're going every day. Look, one has to account for oneself in all honesty. Sorry for diverting from that, but the point was that even with the ibadat, yes, there's a taklif here. In that added part of Dua Arafah, suddenly he enters pure Tawhid. Taraddudi, Ilahi, taraddudi fil athar, yujibu bu'd al-mazar. This, me looking, perusing through your athar, all your signs and manifestations of Allah in this world, it leads to me becoming distant from you. I want to be with you everywhere. I shouldn't peruse through creation, qua creation. It's you who I want to look at. Bu'd al-mazar. It's kind of a ziyarah of Allah, seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you get drowned in the physical realm, it distances that. See, look, here now it's a high level now of Tawheed. This is now the product, the fruit of this dua is now manifesting. After that state of falling into swoon, now he's come out of that and now he's going into pure Tawheed. كيف يستدل عليك ما هو في وجوده مفتقر إليك. How can creation prove you, or how can you be deducted through creation that I'm perusing, for example? How can you be deducted by a creation who, existence-wise, this creation is wholly dependent upon you? It doesn't make sense to say, I prove Allah through the creation of the sun or the moon. It's okay, it's not haram, but it's a deficient form of Tawheed. To say there's a sun, there's a moon, there's plants, therefore I've proven Allah. Therefore there is Allah. This is wrong. Because you've separated creation from Allah. There's Allah on one side, there's creation on the other side. Creation has proved Allah for you. How can something prove Allah when that something wholly, with a W, it's wholly dependent upon Allah? It's nothing but Him. It's a manifestation of Allah. And then you want to prove Allah through Allah? So a creation of Allah, it doesn't make sense. It's not like the smoke and fire example. I see smoke, therefore there is fire. Smoke is different to fire. It's a different entity to fire. But creation isn't mutually exclusive from Allah. Look, it's like the clothes shop. You see this, the trousers, the gloves, the hat. But that trousers, that hat, it's nothing but thread. You don't say that I've proved the thread through the trousers. The pair of trousers is nothing but thread. What are you proving thread by? You're proving thread by trousers. Trousers has no reality. It has no reality on its own. It's a term, a label. It's indicative of a reality. That reality is thread. But don't say I've proved thread through trousers. Trousers is no reality. It's just a name given. It's all Him, Allah, in dimension. It's all thread in the shop, for example. But there are different clothes. But it's all thread. هو الأول والآخر والظاهر والباطن. Allah is the first, the last, the inner, the out of everything. There's nothing but Him. That pure existence. It's Him. How can Imam Hussein is saying now, he's taken Tawheed to a high level now. You want to be Husseini, a follower of true Tawheed, to utter the expressions of Tawheed he uttered towards the end of his life. You have to incorporate pure Tawheed. Otherwise, it's a very Zahiri understanding of Imam Hussein, of what he represented. And Karbala or Ashura will just be the same story every year. After 40, 50, 60 years, you haven't grown at all, because it was always the Zahir of Karbala, the Zahir of Ashura. You sufficed with that. You enjoyed that. You even enjoy it when Ashura comes, the events, the gatherings, the food, the eating. But after 60 years, it's the same you. There was no dynamicity. You never grew spiritually, because it was always those labels that you drowned yourself with. أيكون لغيرك من الظهور ما ليس لك حتى تكون هو المظهر حتى يكون هو المظهر لك. Is there anything from this manifestation other than you, which isn't in unity with you, for it to manifest you? So you're one side, this is something, and this manifests you. Everything is in unity with you. Everything is manifesting you, but in a way that there's no mutual exclusivity. And that's why between Haqq, Allah, and Khalq, creation, there's a unity here. One is just manifesting it, the other. Not that there's Allah, and then now Allah, like what these gap theologians say, there's a gap, and Allah's not manifesting, He's not creating, then He starts creating. This has many difficulties. This kind of Tawhid is a Tawhid which is on a par with Judaic, numerical monotheism. Then the Imam says, Mata ghibta, when were you ever absent? Hatta tahtaja ila dalilin yadullu alayk, so that you would even need a guide to prove you. When He's the first, the last, the outer, the inner of everything. When He's one, infinite, always was, will always be. Everything depends on it. It's all Him in dimension. When was Allah ever absent? Those who say, I'm on my quest to find Allah, that's wrong. Because they approve of the sun, the moon, me, plants and everything. Now let's find Allah. No, that's a wrong question. Let's go and find Allah now. So in one of Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh's poems, he says, some people say, where in relation to Allah? But I say, Him. It's all Him. What do you mean, where? When was He ever absent for you now to go and find? Look, the Imam here, the second part of the dua is giving codes here. You have to incorporate Tawheed. This is important. ومتى بعدت حتى تكون الآثار هي التي توصل إليك. And when were you ever distanced, so that these manifestations takes us to you? He was never distanced. He was never absent. And so on and so forth. So here, when we look at the overall picture of Ashura, and then some traditions say that whoever goes to Karbala, it's 70 times more of value than those who go to, for example, Hajj. Look, the issue is this, that Hajj is all about Tawheed. This Tawheed, though, has to manifest itself. How this pure Tawheed manifests itself in action varies from person to person, depending on their level of Tawheed and how they can interact with the burdens that face them. When burdens face you, the Tawheed that you've incorporated will manifest itself. Some traditions say that X action, giving charity, is X times more value of going to Hajj. Also with Karbala, going to Karbala is X times more of value than going to Hajj. Why is everything more greater than Hajj, than Umrah? Why? The point is this, that Hajj or Umrah is pure Tawheed. That's the underlying scaffolding of Islam. It's the Hajj. However, how are you going to manifest it? When you manifest Tawheed, that manifestation, since it's a manifestation of Tawheed, is of now more value than you just having Tawheed not manifested. That's when sometimes it says if you do this action, usually it's with charity, it's more value than going to Umrah. With Karbala too, what Imam Hussein did, he manifested Tawhid maximally. We may not be able to manifest Tawhid in that manner, but if we were to manifest pure Tawhid with a pure fitrah, it would be of more value than going just Hajj but not manifesting it. Look, the key is Tawhid. This has to be incorporated. To the degree this is incorporated, your salvation, to the degree that this Tawhid is incorporated and then manifested, your salvation to that degree, in proportion to that degree, will be guaranteed, whoever you are. And this is a very important lesson to take from Ashura. Inshallah, we'll speak more about this Tawhid in future sessions, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala tahirin.